So welcome everyone. Welcome to this session on knowing your customers as part of Climate Founders Week. Nice to meet you all and lovely to have my colleague Joe taking part as well in this presentation today. So maybe let's do a quick intros of your two speakers today. So I'm Marie Geneste. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of the C Collective. I am a marketing expert with 15 experience in marketing, but also user experience and sales, and more recently in the environmental and social impact ecosystem. So I've worked with blue chip and startup organizations for all of my career, and I founded and co-founded the C Collective 5 years ago, actually, to focus only on an organization like yours with positive social and environmental impact. So I'm also happen to be an environmental science educator looking at climate change and biodiversity. And I'm really passionate today to have you here to help you understand how we can bring people and planet-centered approaches to product design and marketing. And I'm here with my colleague, Joe. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Marie. Hi, I'm Joe Collingwood. I'm the lead UX designer in Marie's team. Been working in UX for 15 years now, mixture of experiences in agency side, big corporates and startups, focusing on helping businesses, particularly startups in the last 5 years, conduct user research or the right research for their business and product and services, and then helping them develop strategies and ultimately product design for their products, mainly focused in digital, some non-digital experience, but yeah, mainly digital. And yeah, really focused on helping companies now factor in more sustainability practices from the ground up using user research, and focus on more positive outcomes for their business, but also for their customers and users.
Great, thanks, Joe. And I want to say it's great to have you here because I've run this workshop for many times for accelerators, incubators, and I often do it on my own. But it's good to have a sparring partner today. So thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so let's continue your introductions. Thanks for those who have already put something in the chat. Feel free to tell us your business pitch, what you're doing, which stage you're in, and if you have any specific expectations or questions with regards to this session. We will have lots of opportunities for Q&A, but feel free to ask some questions now or as they come up to your mind using the chat. Joe will be monitoring the chat because I can't really see it because I'm managing the screen share, but we'll try to answer your questions as they come if possible. So maybe a few words about our organization, the C Collective. So we are a UK-based consultancy with clients mainly in Europe and sometimes overseas. And we support entrepreneurs like you that are trying to scale their sustainable solution. And we do it through a people and planet-centered approach to design and marketing. So our services include strategy and user research, which is going to be the topic of today's session. So it's about really understanding needs of your business, its market, its users, and the wider ecosystem. And we also support our clients on design, so creating, testing, optimizing products, services, websites, and also overall end user experiences so that they can work for both people and planet. And we also support our clients on marketing, so creating user-centered content and marketing strategies to engage and convert users. So we are going to start this session by asking you a question. And we have a little poll, which I'm going to bring here. Hopefully it's working. I mean, I'm sure you are familiar with Mentimeter. It's loading. So we're just going to ask you to scale, to rate your own understanding of your customers using this Mentimeter. Is it working? Yeah, Joe?
Yes. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So there's a scale of 1 to 4. The first one is I'm pretty clueless, but I'm keen to learn. And that's why you're here today. Second level is I have some intuitions that I need to validate. Level 3 is have some solid insight, but needs improvement. And level 4 is I'm really on top of my game. I know my customers better than themselves. So yeah, if you can take a few minutes to take part, that will give us a bit of a baseline to work on. Okay, so I see 3 responses. You should all be able to use the Mentimeter app embedded in Teams. All right. Okay, bring on the responses. A few more. Don't be shy. Okay, great. So you can continue voting, but I think there's a good body of votes in the middle, which means that some of you have started to look into collecting insights, and some of you are well advanced, but there is always room for progress. So hopefully we're gonna give you some interesting insight into how to get that further down.
Thomas just saying the vote didn't appear to him, Marie. So sorry, Thomas, if you want to put your answer in the chat.
Oh, for some people it didn't appear.
No.
Okay.
But if you want to, yes, just paste it in the chat if needed.
I can bring it back in and hang on. I don't know if I can do the sharing in the chat. Well, I'll have to look into this, but that's okay. Anyway, it was just like an interacting thing. It's not the end of the world if you couldn't do it. So let's bring this sharing back on. Oh, no, not the wrong screen. You don't really want to see my emails, do you? All right. Okay, so let's continue and take you through the agenda for today. So we've done the intros. First, we'll dive into all the psychological barriers and external barriers to climate action. Then we'll talk about, we'll give you an overview of different methods to understand your users. We'll have a Q&A/break to give you a little comfort break at in 1 hour at 2 p.m. GMT. And then we'll talk into enhanced persona mapping, mapping of impact, environmental and social impact, and also the tool around service blueprint. And finally, we'll end up with another time for Q&A for Joe and myself. All right, so let's get started. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, so I mean, today is obviously about knowing your customers, and the reason why knowing your customers is so important for every business is really to understand that you're designing and marketing the right thing to the right people. And that's obviously understanding what problems they have and what challenges they are facing in their business, what blockers they have, to really understand how to alleviate those problems and hopefully give them a solution. If you don't understand, of course, what problem they're facing deeply, you're probably likely going to either design the wrong thing or perhaps even design it slightly the wrong way and struggle to keep people in the business. And then the second part of that, Jerry, is the marketing. So we've got to make sure that you understand that you're marketing it right. That's something that's quite usually decoupled and quite a challenge for business to match up maybe the product and the marketing story, and they can be quite separate. So to really understand your customers is to make sure those two things are very, very highly aligned and you have the right information to be able to market it the right way to your customer base.
And so when you're designing or marketing climate tech, the chances are you will find some early adopters clients that will be happy to share your mission and values and therefore engage and be the pioneer clients of your project, of your service. But you will also have to engage with many other people that are not that advanced on that spectrum, that have different beliefs and attitudes, and especially if you have complex buying journeys, like it's often the case in B2B buying decision circles, and also to a certain extent for B2C purchase decisions. So that's why we really want to first, delve into the problems that we have to face when marketing sustainability solutions. And the first thing you have to be aware is that there is a massive attitude behavior gap in sustainable action and consumption. And this is a stat from a very recent, very big survey by the UN, called the People's Climate Vote, which says that essentially 80% of people globally want their country to do more on climate change. But the reality between people, what people say and what people do is very different. And so when we look at, let's look at the UK, this is where we are based, but it applies to many other countries. On the left-hand side, you have this graph showing public's attitudes towards climate change. So an overwhelming majority of people feel fairly or very concerned. That's the blue things, blue part of the chart. But then when you look at the reality of some market shares, there's a very different reality. So for instance, I always quiz people on how much do they think the market share of organic products and so it's food and drink is in the UK. So let's maybe use the chat, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think this market share is in the UK? And we're looking at last year's figure. And Joe, if you can tell me what's coming out in the chat, that would be great. So how much? Give us a number.
We've got 15% in the chat from Matthew.
15%? Okay. All right. I can tell you it's much lower than this. Okay.
If it's 35%.
Much lower. Okay. All right.
20%.
So we are
5%.
definitely looking at single digits. Yeah, Thomas and Camilla, you're closer to this. Anybody else wants to give it a go? All right. So it's actually single digit, but it's actually much lower than what we think. So it's 2.1% only in the UK. So that's not great. And another example, if you look at the share of electric vehicles in sales, that's that's below 20%. So there is still a huge gap, and it's just a fact that we need to be mindful of. So then the question is, why is this gap so wide? Well, I'd say that there's a lot of explanations, but I would like to maybe focus first on this insight that is provided by human science. And essentially, it's all written in our genes. So your buyer's daily behaviors are rooted in ancient biology. And so the science behind that is called evolutionary psychology, and it highlights 5 ancestral forces that are at play. So self-interest, no surprise on this one. Short-termism, so we focus on short-term objectives. Disregard of the risks that you cannot see. We have to just think ourselves as having the DNA of, hunters, gatherers. Social limitation, that's always very much up to date, and the importance of status. Well, however, I mean, this is what our DNA says, and it doesn't mean it's everybody acts like this. There is also culture that shapes our behaviors, but it's important to understand that and to keep that in the back of your head. Then there is beyond evolutionary psychology. I'm a big fan of behavioral psychology as well, and economics, and it's also full of insights with regards to people's attitudes to climate action. And the first learning from that is that people, when it comes to acting on climate, people are far from rational, and especially when it comes to taking action themselves on social and environmental challenges. So there is a fantastic book that was written a long time ago, but still very valid, which is called What We Think About When We Try Not to Think About Global Warming. And it highlights five barriers on which the climate message sort of bumps. I'm going to cover some of them today. So distance, doom, cognitive dissonance, denial, and identity. The first one that I think is still very valid is distance. So remote problems, either in time or space. Problems feel remote, and so we don't act on them. Okay. Obviously, the news, especially if we look at that from a European-centric or maybe a UK-centric prism, but if you think about your own country, you can see that it takes a lot of empathy to make the relationship between what's happening, for instance, in Spain when you're in the UK. And I'm talking about the general population, obviously. But that's the distance problem. So there's really a challenge to make things feel more connected and local to people. And then there is doom. So there's a lot of negative framing of climate change through cost, loss, sacrifice, apocalyptic images even. And no matter how real they are and how close they are, sometimes for people, it creates a need to simply avoid the topic because it's just too much to take in. And when people feel helpless, this fear messaging backfires into inaction. It doesn't mean that fear doesn't work, as a driver, but sometimes before people flight, they actually freeze. So you have to be, mindful with this kind of messaging. And then there is the good old behavioral mechanism of cognitive dissonance. It is really when what we know conflicts with what we do, then you have this dissonance that sets in place so that we can feel good about ourselves and how we live. Okay. So smoking is a really good example, but climate is also a very good one for cognitive dissonance. And then another interesting barrier is identity. So in your case, we filter news through our professional, political, and cultural identities. Okay, so we always look for information that confirms our existing values and notions, and we filter out facts that would make us change our identity. So if you're reading the Guardian, you will probably trust it more than, I don't know, if you're reading another more like right-wing leaning newspaper, like, I don't know, the Telegraph in the UK. And same goes for the Telegraph reader, less thinking about what the Guardian says, for instance. So in your case, in our case today, so that's where understanding the identity of your audience, their worldview, their values, whether they are cultural or political values, is so important. And then seeing how your solution, your climate solution, can resonate with that, or just find workarounds. So finding influencers that will be able to be trusted by your target audience, or people will just, that your audience will just listen to because they are accountable to these people, for instance. So it's really important to have this identity barrier in mind, because it's about finding the right messages so they don't get shot, basically, and don't achieve their goal of informing people and leading to action. And then there are also, beyond the sort of psychological and behavioral barriers, I added also a couple of more external barriers that we're seeing more. So related to the identity barrier, I think there is a very strong polarization of the climate agenda that has appeared intensified, I say, in the past 5 years. So we have the scientific consensus and the thought leaders being, under massive pressure from the fossil fuel lobby, populist politics, and plus this being all amplified on social media. So it's really there's really a lot of pressure at the moment, I think, on top of the barriers that we've seen, which means that the people that are working, that are continuing to work on this agenda that is informed by science, they have to be, mustering extra courage and determination to continue to act upon this science-based beliefs, basically. So that's really important to have in mind, especially with the big political agenda we're seeing, this week and just this year in all over the world. And then another external barrier is the constantly evolving regulatory landscape. So it's really, I think overall it's an opportunity. Don't get me wrong, but it's still it is also a source of uncertainty. Because of the volume of regulation that's coming in, because the change of timelines and scope and so on, and sometimes this also creates a bit of an analysis paralysis among decision makers that are on the front line of this regulation. So something just bear in mind. So the bottom line is that all of this has to be researched, by putting yourself in the shoes of your end users to understand what's going on in their head and how they feel they are being impacted by all those barriers, regulations, political agenda, and so on. Right. So know that we have all those barriers in mind. The challenge is really to create inspiring and frictionless end-to-end user experiences, strategies to overcome them one by one, in a way. And so the best way for entrepreneurs, whether you're in a B2B or B2C space, is to really embrace this shift of paradigm where you just take your amazing product and service for granted and you just put it in the market and it will work. And you instead, you try to build with the product can be at the center of that, but to build an end user experiences that will inspire your users to change. And this has to be built around their actual needs and attitudes. And that's why you need this really solid body of customer insights that we are going to be talking about today. And so what does it take to achieve this? It's really, so you need this solidity of insight, but you also need to get this insight in the context of the entire buying journey. So that you can define as a business along the buying journey what needs to be done at every single stage and across all the relevant channels as well. Because when you think about it, you start building your experience and your brand even before users reach your website or speak to your salespeople. So they're already a long way through buying journey when they get in touch. And that's why this understanding has to be developed very at the highest level of the funnel. And that's why, branding, thought leadership, and storytelling are an integral part of your customer experience strategy and need to be informed by very good customer insight. Okay. And then the goal at the end of the day is to create a virtuous buying journey where users move smoothly from one stage to the next, end up becoming advocates of your service, and which reduces your cost of acquisition and makes your business super efficient, your team's happy as well. And this is true for every business, by the way. This works for every business. It's not specific to climate space. But what is specific to our climate space and our climate tech ecosystem is with that we have to do this within another set of dimensions, which a lot of you might be familiar with, which is the safe space of the donut. So we can't just, do design and build of products or marketing of products in a vacuum. We can't only focus on fulfilling the needs of your users. We also have to do all that while staying within the safe space of the donut. So ecological sealing and fulfillment of social needs. So that being said, actually, I'm not going to give you a break just now, but I just wanted to ask if you had any questions. From there, I'm just checking the chat. Did we have any question? Right. Okay. In that case, we will move on to the nitty-gritty of this presentation, which is really how do you get to that solid understanding of your customers. Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Marie. So next following section, we're going to take you through activities that hopefully give you some frameworks you can use moving forwards, and some information that you can take forward in terms of understanding your customers better. Of course, Marie's explained a little bit about why we want to understand your customers. I think now we want to help you sort of take away tactics to actually go out and then and find users, and how to then take the information you gather and form that into actionable insights. Of course, every great design, every great product, every great service starts with a great story. And of course, I think a lot of startups, specifically startups and large businesses, have maybe a great story about the business and why it started, and perhaps the founders. But it's also equally important to discover your customer's story. And by stories, as Marie alluded to, is that often in user research, people isolate the buyer journey in terms of just when they have a touch point with the business, maybe a little bit before it. But it's actually important to discover the full story of your customer. And that means the concept of why they've come to where they are, how, and a bit more of the context setting for the customer. And us as humans tend to respond better to stories as well. And taking that forward in terms of maybe you've got bigger teams, and sharing that's always easier if there's a story behind it rather than just a flat kind of list of facts. First, we're going to do a quick activity together. I'm just going to share a link in the chat.
On FigJam, right?
Yeah, on FigJam, yeah. So if you're not familiar with FigJam, I'll talk through it once we're on the board. But the activity is just to reflect and write down a little bit some ideas about who your target users are for your business. So who they are, where they are, and the problem that they're facing that you want to solve as a business, and what you think they need in terms of the solution to their problem. Very quick, just want to kind of get a feel in the room in terms of what sort of customers you're dealing with. Just going to share the link in the chat. It is a FigJam link. And that will, if you click on that link, it will take you hopefully to open FigJam in the browser. Once you're there, I will talk through a little bit what we're going to do together. So I'll give everyone a few moments just to get that loaded.
Yeah, I'll screen share as well, but it's best that you use this time to do a bit of a hands-on thinking and work from your own FigJam board.
Okay, I can see people joining. Great.
And whenever you're there, you just find a slot, put your name in, and follow Joe's instructions.
Yeah, I'm just going to spotlight myself, which should bring everyone to my view. If it works, there we go. Okay, great. So there's different little canvases here, empty at the moment. Hopefully you're going to fill them in together. What we need to do is, first of all, find a canvas for yourself that no one's using before. You'll see a block at the top that says your name. If everyone can just find an empty canvas and write down their name in the yellow sort of digital sticky note, you can do that by just click on it, double click, and you can pop your name on there. So if I give everyone a minute or so just to find a canvas, and then I'll talk through the rest of the board. And please do call out if you're having any issues.
And you'll get access to those boards after. So any time you've invested in putting insight into this will be you can recover after and progress on what you've done.
Very cool, good. Okay. Does anyone have any issues with using FigJam? Silence is okay, good. Okay, remember to talk through the rest of the canvas first, and then you can write in your own information in there. So you've got your name at the top. There's 4 kind of columns we're going to focus on first. The first one being who are they? So that's who are the customers, the ideal customer that you have, or maybe it's the current customers you have. Just give a little bit background information in terms of the demographics, their attitudes, and maybe the industry they're in, and the business they potentially have if it's a B2B customer. Then there's what is their situation, and that's the sort of current context of their situation, whether they're, for example, a small business owner that is creating a new startup and they're growing the business, or maybe it's a more formed business that has a big team, for example. Just give a little bit of the situation that they currently have. Then the next one is what the problem they have, and the bit all the business has. Give a bit of outline in terms of what you think the main challenge is that you're trying to address for them. And then the final box is how do you think you solve their problem? Maybe you're already currently trying to solve their problem, or if you're a startup, then how do you think you're going to get there? So if you can just fill out those 4 columns for us. I'm going to set a timer to give a few minutes to do this. Any issues or questions, please do comment in the chat or shout out. Can't see Greg's has had an issue.
Yeah, I think it's going to logging back in.
Yeah, I'm going to stop spotlighting myself. Okay, cool. I will take maybe 3 minutes. Give you a bit of time to do this. I'll set a timer, and then we come back together afterwards. Good. Okay, does anyone want to volunteer? Or we'll pick on someone if not. Just explain a little bit what you've written.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and just share whatever you've written there. Joe, I think you'll have to pick someone.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You'll have to volunteer someone.
Camilla, you've written a nice amount. Maybe if you can explain if you don't mind.
Camilla, feel free to unmute yourself and share with the group if you that's okay.
I can't have you. Okay, no problem. Let's have a look in the chat.
Oh, I can't unmute. Oh, I'll see if I can.
Hi, sorry. Can you hear?
Oh, okay.
Yes, we can.
Hello.
Hi, I don't know what happened. I couldn't.
But we can hear you now.
Myself.
No problem. Nice to meet you.
Hi, my name is Camila. I'll make just a quick introduction, just like to give a little bit of context.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm part of Vela. We're a consultancy firm based in Costa Rica, and we're looking to support basically SMEs, startups, and accelerators in the Latin American ecosystem. So it's kind of broad, I think, but I try to synthesize a little bit and focus maybe on SMEs in this board. So yeah, I just wrote down these 3 target markets that we have. Their situation is basically they're motivated either in the need for compliance with sustainability trends, innovation, market expansion, these kind of things. Their problem is needing to maintain a competitive edge or to enter a new market, needing basically support in this kind of strategy or sustainability. I don't know if can you hear me?
Yeah,
that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. because you got frozen, so I didn't know if it was me. Yeah, that's basically the problem, and how I think we can help is basically like supporting, creating strategies, supporting with, I don't know, patent landscaping, environmental compliance, these kind of things. So that's basically.
Cool, great.
I tried
Thanks
to
very much.
summarize.
Yeah, that's good. What's been the biggest challenge for you so far in terms of knowing your customers?
We're focusing on bioeconomy and biotechnology. So something that has been a challenge is kind of like narrowing it down to, because it's broad. I mean, bioeconomy of course includes biotechnology, but it can be so many things that I think finding basically like different personas, I like client personas that we can like put a name on, and like, okay, what's their specific problem and how can we like support in this kind of, so that has been a challenge, like narrowing down into specifics.
Yeah, quite a common challenge I think with with businesses, but in the broad context, and also the difference that you touched on in terms of different personas, but the potential also for segmentation within a persona, and the balance between what's the right thing to do. Okay, no, that's good. Okay, thanks a lot. Marie, unless you have any other questions.
No, we can continue.
Okay. Anyone else want to volunteer, or should we move forward? Okay, let's move forward. Okay, great. So I think as given touched on here, it's a challenge to kind of narrow down a little bit the real nuances and specifics to do with your customer. I think the first step in anything we do in terms of user research is to get into your customer's shoes, or user's shoes. And what we mean by that is actually getting out, physically meeting them, maybe it's face to face or in their environment and watching. But it's definitely important to not just sit behind a laptop and do desk research endlessly, and actually getting out and meeting people. Ultimately, most businesses, we all run our people-focused businesses, so you need to get out and actually speak to them. Go to the next slide, Marie. So the reason why this is important is because the more you actually get out and engage with the user base and yourselves, and not just, you can get researchers involved, but ultimately as business owners or business stakeholders, it's important that we really understand. So getting out, spending time and engaging with the user base increases our knowledge. And in doing so, we move from maybe starting off in a sympathy sort of headspace where we care about the problem, which is usually based on limited knowledge, and we want to do but we don't know quite how to help, then move towards some more time, we gain more knowledge and move towards more an empathetic kind of zone. And that means that perhaps by spending time with them and in their space and in their problems, you really have felt the problem, and by that means you've actually encountered it and seen how much it can affect their business or themselves or the teams. So really kind of actually understand the nuance there. And finally, that helps us move to then a compassionate place, which is having felt the problem and you actually want to relieve it, so you know exactly what the problem is, and your business and your service and products, you can see a vision of how and what it is you want to do to relieve their problems. So you can only really do that with a great level of time and engagement with the customer base to build out that knowledge. If you don't get enough knowledge and enough time, you're probably never going to move far enough into the empathy and compassion spaces. So again, second part of this activity.
Yeah, go for it.
Is it okay, Marie?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Yeah. So if we can move back onto the FigJam board that we're just on. Put the link on the chat. If everyone's still there, I can see 7 people still there. Great. So we have on the canvases you're just working on, there's a white box underneath and this what box is, where can I go to meet our users? So specific locations and scenarios where you can go out and understand your users and walk a mile in their shoes. So if your key customer base is farmers, for example, like you're going to go out and visit them at their farms and discuss things there. If it's wind turbine manufacturer, you can go to the factory and speak to them there. If it's more a B2C customer, then there's probably B2C consumer spaces that you can go to speak to them. And this is very much physical spaces that you can meet people face to face. So maybe, is that clear? Any questions on the purpose of this box? Anything? No? Cool. Maybe I'll give everyone who's working on those boxes another 3 minutes. Say it's 2 minutes. And we just write down a few where you think you can go to get out and meet your own customers. Okay. Okay, great. Does anyone want to talk about their boards? I'll pick someone again. Ooh. I'm going to pick someone. Maybe Darren, if that's pronounced correctly. You willing to?
Lots of ideas inside.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Hello. Very interesting business as well. So, just talk us through a bit the background, and then talk us through your boards.
So if I can introduce myself, I'm Darren. I'm a generational master beekeeper in a Kumu Laulapa'au, which is an honorific in Hawaii. That's teacher of Hawaiian medicine plants. And we're in a delicate situation here in Hawaii that circular economy has been on our minds generationally, but because of this cash system, it's taken a turn. So my product is using traditional Hawaiian medicine plants knowledge, but it is kind of under kapu. Taboo is a bad word for that because it means more than that. And so many people would feel that I'm stealing from them personally. So my target customers will first be in Europe and Japan and other First Nations, so that the regenerative agriculture aspect of healing the soil can be promoted first, instead of just selling plastic figurines made in foreign countries to local tourists. So it's both using healing knowledge in order to promote regenerative agriculture. So finding those people, though, is what the question was, if I didn't give enough background.
Yeah.
And then, yes, that is challenging. So it's angel investors are who my first target customers are. And that's been through networking. Those are the ones suggesting I use Twitter and going towards other higher end networking events using online platforms like that. And I know dumb luck is a actual strategy. Not a good one, but it 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 has led me to my past careers as a music manager. So helping artists in a new way is something I can work towards. So some reality and some hope. I'll share it that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the luck's a good point. I mean, of course, it's a fact that yes, luck does play a part in these things. You don't want to put too much of your eggs in that luck basket, but it's it definitely plays a part. Interesting in terms of when you say you put who they are. It's a very specific, pretty specific demographic there in terms of husbands helping women with severe menstrual cramps. And obviously, I can see the logic there in terms of the health benefit. What made you come to that specific user?
Because of the price point. So yes, out of the 600 women that I did, let's just say interview, they're not my target customers because I spoke to them only here in person in Hawaii. They want it. They just want first, though, the regenerative agriculture portion to bring down the price.
Right. So it's very much. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
No, go ahead or ask.
So it's very much a gift.
Gift, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very much cultural also, that aspect.
Okay, interesting, super interesting. And in terms of the Twitter, have you tried, had much success with that avenue? Obviously, it's a digital avenue, and you've done some interviews, obviously, with people, I presume, that are local to you. And if you're going into markets that are not easily accessible, obviously you have to fly quite a long way to get to Europe. How have you managed that kind of networking events and the Twitter? Did you have much success?
I just started this week. That's why I'm on this Zoom call or whatever this platform is called.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, good. It's good to know.
So I think I'm a brand new product, as in months old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I think the Twitter is. I think social media is getting harder to target, especially in Twitter, because it's not easy to navigate through the mass in there. But we can come back to in terms of maybe helping you with that in terms of the frameworks for the service blueprint in a bit. But no, thanks for sharing. It's very interesting.
There's another interesting ideas maybe on where to find people working with more like industrial clients, so looking at industrial hotspots with like going into the manufacturing plants. Few people I've mentioned trade shows where you can actually see people face to face, and community meetings, obviously social media, schools if you're engaging with teachers or students.
Mm-hmm.
Open street events, I guess, and also more incubators and networking platforms. I think we have a good mix of things. Maybe we could also think about things like going into people's actual office, and seeing them at work, to understand what their daily routine looks like. That could be also a good, simple place to start.
Yeah, indeed. I think the balance to find is that you really want to go to the user in their sort of natural context. So like Marie said, at their work or at their factory, so you observe genuine behaviour. I think the tricky thing with things like trade shows, very good for networking, very good for a bit of discussion, but I think if people wearing their networking kind of hat on the days, it's difficult to really drill down into any meaningful insights that can be used to solve a problem. Great for growing a business for sure, but in terms of developing a persona, that can be quite tricky. But yeah, definitely the local community events is a great one. Open streets, and then the schools. Yeah, if your demographic is, if schools are part of the business ecosystem, then things like that can be great sources to actually speak to people in their genuine locations. Okay, good. Do you want to take a quick break when it's 2 o'clock, or should we keep going?
Yeah, do. If you guys need a comfort break, we can you can use that now. We'll give you a couple of minutes, and we can. In the meantime, those who are keen to carry on, we can take a few questions. I think Darren is yeah. So let's take a couple of minutes break in case people want to just refill, because we still have 1 hour to go, and we want you to be having the maximum energy. For some of us, it might be after lunchtime. So let's start again at 2:02 GMT. Darren needs a break. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to grab some more water myself. But if you do have questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and start the discussion.
So a glass of water as well, Marie. I'll be back in 1 minute.
All right. And I see that some people have. Marianella, is that you? Are you just joining? Yes. Okay. So we've started a bit, but we've looked into the sort of existing barriers to climate action, and now we are diving into different methods to conduct user research. And everything is recorded, and you'll get the slides so you can catch up on the first part of the session, which is running for another hour also. So welcome, Marinella. And if you want to just introduce yourself through the chat, feel free to do so. We were just giving a comfort break to the rest of the participants. Yeah, feel free to tell us which business or innovation you're working on, where you're based. We have people calling in from Austria, the UK, Hawaii, I think. This is where Darren is calling from. So yeah, lots of different climate founders with us today. All right, shall we start again, Joe?
Yep. Okay, carry on. Okay, good. So the first part that was just discussing a little bit what you already knew about customers and how you as yourself could go and increase your knowledge. The next part will be a bit more specific tactics that you can take to actually gather more insights on more a bigger scale, let's say, for your customers. These are the list of kind of 3 phases of research. The first being kind of fact finding and validating assumptions and discovery tactics, all around forming a base for the business strategy and running product strategy as well. Then the orange middle phase is then tactics for testing. This could be testing a product, or it could be a service, or even marketing, communications, but much more getting some feedback on actual service or actual product. And then the final phase there is the experimentation, which when you've got a kind of well-formed product service based on good insights, then you can start experimenting and really narrowing down the specifics there and nuances, maybe in communication, nuances on flows, etc. if it's a product. In terms of the methods you see, if we focus on the first column there, the brown column, so desktop research, competitive benchmarking, user observation, qualitative user interviews, and user surveys, that's some of the things. There's a longer list of many things you can do. They're the kind of key ones that businesses tend to undertake. Which of those methods has anyone used before, and they found to be most effective? If you just maybe drop in the chat ones that you think are the most useful for you as a business or a person, or shout out if you want to shout out. That's also okay.
So maybe I'll put. So which ones have you used? I just put the list back in. So desktop research, competitive benchmark, user observation, qualitative user interviews, or user surveys. Or which ones have you not used, maybe, if it's shorter to write this? If you can just drop that through the chat. All right.
All right, we're going.
Let's continue.
Yeah.
We'll see
So we
if
want
there's
to
some
focus on
answers. Surveys, interviews. 600 women. Oh, good. All right. We'll talk about surveys.
That's a great quantity. I think surveys definitely are important. I think we just want to focus on a few maybe that are not used as much. Certainly, user observation being one. So user observation is when you go to the context of the situation, or the context of the customer you're using. So if it's a farmer, you go to the farms. If it's climate tech, maybe you go to the factories. But the idea of this user thing is that you're purely observing the behavior of the user. I think a lot of people, or a lot of what you find in user interviews, for example, user research, is that people and customers will say one thing, but actually do another. And there's a big risk there that if you just listen to what they say, you actually miss a bit of the context and nuances. Perhaps also they can lead you down the wrong path sometimes with all the good intentions. So it's very important to go and actually observe the customer. This can be done, if it's local to you in your community, then it's advisable that you as a business go out and observe them. Obviously, sort of research companies can do this activity as well, but it's a very good one for actually just bridging that gap between what the user says and what the user actually does. And then for the next one, and for then the second sort of half of that is the qualitative user interviews, and that's when you sit down and you actually speak to the customers, potential users, and other stakeholders as well. This is not just the end user or the end customer. You can use it to any stakeholder within the business life cycle is important to interview, and that usually involves having a preset interview guide. It's a list of questions you want to cover. The benefit of doing this after a user observation is doing the observation, you will bring out more questions that you want to ask potentially in a user interview to say, okay, well, in that situation you did this, why was that? And really drill down into specific behaviors of the user, as well as asking for written verbal kind of feedback. We recommend to at least interview 5 people. That will capture a lot of insights, but can be up to 15, up to 30, depends on the kind of scope of the objective of the interview and the research and the size of kind of business and the complexity of the challenge, the number of stakeholders that are perhaps involved in this. But it's super important to actually speak to these customers. Interviews are quite a technique that is not used as much probably as it should do. I think it's seen as quite high cost, but the actual value you get from interviews is invaluable in terms of the cost, and always will be worthwhile. And then finally is user surveys. I think that's kind of one that probably people are most familiar with, using online surveys or sometimes paper surveys. I think the usefulness here is to do them after you've done user interviews, and you can really then figure out on what questions you want to ask in the survey that you need sort of mass scale results on. And the surveys tend to get quite good, potentially quantitative data, or very good quantitative data, and sometimes quite good qualitative. The problem with the in surveys in the qualitative data is that you'll see that the customer probably won't write that much within a survey box. So you kind of lack, potentially, if you only rely on surveys, you might lack a lot of the nuance and insights that you would get from a user interview. So we would recommend to do this after a set of interviews. And so keep it short. Surveys should be 5 to 10 minutes to complete, no longer. And plenty of online tools to do this quite low cost and mass scale. One interesting, almost seen as old school, I think, the last 20 years, but is phone surveys, and that's quite a good in between from user interviews and surveys. So you have a set of questions. Sometimes you use a third party to run the phone surveys for you. But that's always quite a good way to get a bit more of the qualitative stuff, but on a mass scale, and also good for less tech savvy audiences and customer bases that, again, back to the farmers, quite classically, they're not very tech savvy. So actually going and phone calling them is actually a lot easier than asking them to fill out a SurveyMonkey form online. To see a comment come up there. Marinella,
do you want to take the comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to take the comment just because it's relevant for that. So use research tools such as social media, website mission, vision, known existing providers and or existing business partners to see if our goals and business ethics align before approaching regarding sales. Qualitative meetings are the next step. Yeah, indeed. I think it depends on the purpose of the task there. If you're approaching regarding sales, I think the sales funnel probably is very different to maybe an early stage kind of discovery research. And if you're looking at a business, a B2B kind of, I think definitely desk research is important, and doing that digging to find out if the potential business aligns with yourselves and your own challenges, and you think you can solve their problems, then definitely for sure before doing the qualitative meetings. Again, depends on the target audience really, to apply which method.
And to support what you're saying and to Marina's comment, I think obviously it's great that salespeople or whoever is supposed to engage with sales are putting some skin in the research game and continuously feeding back to the rest of the team the insight they are collecting as part of the sales journey. But at the same time, I just want to caveat that this is a very different exercise than doing research for the sake of exploratory research and shaping product, services, and value proposition, because there is a sort of depth of questioning that is quite different than the one you can do when you're having an actual discovery and sales meeting. So yeah, just to manage expectation that you can't always have the same output when you're just having like more casual fact-finding discovery questions as part of a sales meeting versus doing proper research. Right, that was my point. So to summarize all those research techniques that you can use, these are really important and worth your time and money, whether you do them in-house or outsource them, because they are going to give you some super valuable deliverables for both product design or service design and marketing further down the line. So things like user/buyer personas, or in sales, you can talk about ideal customer profiles, mapping the journeys, the buying journeys of your target customers, prioritizing features based on what clients think are must-have, nice to have. And then these will inform your service and product roadmap. And this is what we'll talk about later, the sort of the tool of service blueprint, and also your marketing strategy and operation. So shaping your key messaging, shaping the stages, structure, and content of your marketing campaign. So it's really a super valuable piece of strategic insight to collect. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Marie. Just a quick question in the chat, answer in the chat if you have you seen or created personas like this? So personas that maybe have a job title, a short about me, goals, needs, personality type, network, behavior traits and pain points and interests. I see some yes. Thanks, Darren.
Good. That's good.
Yeah. So now these personas are quite classic persona structure, I would say, and quite a useful output. There is a level 2 to this, let's say, which is what we want to do a little bit. And the thing with these personas, we call them the cut and paste personas. The good thing about them, yeah, they're going to collate research data that you have, and it's always good to have a way of formulating that into a thing that you can think through and maybe share with other stakeholders and align with other stakeholders. And they do help. The classic one does help focus on the pain points and to inform design and marketing. Now, the problem with them and what we are going to advise maybe to level them up today is that they actually don't really allow stakeholders, especially if you've got a bigger team, to relate to the user, their thoughts, behavior, the context they're in. Now we show some there with like personality traits and stuff, and it's our personalities this whole kind of morph and change dependent on the context we're in. So actually, as a usable data set, it's not that usable in the long term. They also are quite static, so they maybe have someone in a specific moment in time, but things evolve, as Marie alluded to earlier. When the customer comes to you, they may be quite far down the sales funnel, but you've missed a lot of the context at the start, and that's really valuable insight to know. They don't take any environmental context into the user, which we'll come back to later, especially for sustainability. And they also allow for other stakeholders in the team to kind of fill in the gaps. As I said before, it's always stronger if you have a story based for these personas, and if you don't have the full story, a lot of these personas, these static personas, you may think you're aligned because you're reading the same persona, but they actually allow for a lot of misinterpretation because we naturally fill in the gaps of what their story is. So a marketing team may have a completely different really opinion of it than a product team, for example. And that misalignment can actually be almost a hidden misalignment for quite a long time, and that's a quite difficult thing to overcome long term and can cause quite a lot of friction within the business. So one way of enhancing these personas, these are still personas we're going to show you, but it's as a way of enhancing that to give a bit more of the nuance in the story, is that you still have a characteristics and values on top. So here there could be attitudinal values, what they think about a certain industry in the context of your business or a certain topic. It's probably some demographic information if it's useful. Don't put demographic information if it's not not relevant, of course. And then the core values maybe they have that, and that's important to see if they align with the business story. And then in terms of the actual meat of the structure, that we elaborate a bit more the context and the current status quo. So instead of having an about me, we actually talk broader than that in terms of what is their context, where are they, what's built them to this position, what's their general life experience, and also the business experience in terms of what their business does if it's a B2B customer. And then within that, what is the problem that they're facing in the status quo? And that's quite similar to the pain points that you might see on other personas. Then importantly, the desire for change. So what's actually driving them to want to change the status quo that they're currently in, and hopefully go out and seek what they're seeking for that solution, that product, that business. And any conflict and obstacles that will mean that they can't achieve that desire for change, and stop them maybe from finding your business or not choosing the business. And then what enablers, what motivators are there that actually drive them forward in their journey to ultimately choose your business and service, and also to stay with the business service. So we've got a little sort of example of that on the next slide. So this is obviously not a visual presentation, just a very text heavy, but just give a bit of insight in terms of what each section is. So this is Luca, who's a B2B example for climate impact tech, fintech, and a purpose-driven SME owner. They have some attributes there in terms of age and location. They're in Italy, and they own a small manufacturing business. And then we have some attitudinal data. So they're passionate about reducing the company's environmental footprint. In reality, this persona will be quite more detailed than this. This is 1 or 2 points for each section. Importantly, what relationships and what close ties they have. So this for Luca has close ties with local suppliers. Important to find that insight out because it's a way of maybe tactically getting to those that core customer and certainly relating to their challenges. Then in terms of the actual main sort of story structure, with a context and status quo, facing increased regulatory pressures with their coming CBAM requirements and EU sustainability mandates. So it's feeling a lot of pressure here. There's some emotional attachment that you can add to the persona as well in this instance. Then the problem here is they're struggling to source affordable low carbon raw materials that meet quality standards. This is one of the problems that's, it's a bit more specific there. And then desire for change example is, aspires to become a recognized sustainable leader within this industry. So they may have a personal desire in terms of an intrinsic one, and they may also have ones that are more for their business. So then desires financial products tailored for sustainable investments to ease the capital burden of green projects. That's the change they want to see in the world. Then some conflicts and obstacles that Luca's constantly facing: limited budget, restricting investment in advanced sustainability initiatives or technology. There can be other ones that more intrinsic, so he's hesitant to shift to long-standing suppliers because they have those relationships for a long time, and that seems a big barrier for him to change. And then some enablers here, examples are excess sustainability linked financial products. So then that speaks to more where the product and services could go in terms of what would help them make their desire for change. So that's kind of a very quick overview of what each section is and how you can build that persona and hopefully make it a bit more usable in terms of specifics there. So from a product point of view, you're already drawing out some specifics of what can help them, but also from a marketing point of view, you're already speaking to some of the stories that you could start telling to convince Luca to choose your product and business. So these are a lot broader, a lot more depth to these personas than maybe a standard persona. Well, we've got any questions on that one, because that's quite a
meaty one.
Yeah. Please feel free to shout out if you want to unmute or drop them in the chat.
No questions for now.
Okay. So to create these, when you call the character persona, we need to uncover the customer story. So that means basically, essentially getting more context around their status quo, their problem, their desire for change. And this takes a variety of implemented tactics to achieve this. We spoke about them earlier into the surveys and stuff, but it will take many different tactics to gather all this data, because you may need some more qualitative indicators to gather some things. You may need mass tactics like surveys to get others. So you need to combine a lot of different tactics to really get a full picture and not rely on just one source of data, essentially. And also, doing this investment up front and early in the project will always save a lot of cost long term, because if you start building the wrong product or wrong service, you could sink 200k into this and then find out later on that it's the wrong product or it's got the wrong features in it, and you have to you lose that cost. Whereas you could have spent 50,000 or 25,000 up front and discovered a lot more depth in terms of the research to know which problem and what product you're trying to solve. Classic one as well is people try and solve too many problems or with too many features, and actually narrowing down the scope and really targeting just one single proper understood customer with one potential two really understood features in a product, for example, is a lot better than trying to broad sweep a lot of different challenges all in one go. So, how would we turn research into structured, actionable insights? And that's mapping the story progress. So you would have formed the persona. That's one side. And I think the advantage of the contextual personas we've shown you is that we'll already start building in a bit of the journey and a bit of the story that they're undertaking, which makes the mapping of the journey a lot easier. And what classically happens in the other standard type of persona is that because you don't have much of the story there, it's actually very hard to then map onto a journey and understand the journey and they become two very separate artifacts that actually don't talk to each other, and don't get a full picture. In terms of the customer journey mapping, I'm sure many of you have encountered this before. How we like to, it's a slightly more depth to the story mapping we do. You have, of course, phases at the top, classic ones: awareness, discovery, conversion, advocacy, and loyalty. Those phases obviously will depend on your specific business and specific context, but they're the traditional ones. And then there's a conversion point in the middle. Before that, in the awareness and discovery phases, we split the kind of context there into two different things. So events and situations. And events are anything that's a passive situation, a passive news event or a piece of information that a customer can be given or encounter that kind of sits with them. It will influence their decision making later on, but it won't make them immediately action something. And situations are anything that actually makes the customer action something. So whether that's to contact someone or to seek something, they're actually going to actively do something there. And events, essentially, there's going to be a lot of events that build to a situation, or there can be a situation that suddenly gets forced upon them that it forces them to change their behaviour or move forward in the process. But understanding the nuance there, two different things. The good thing about the events, again, can lead to quite good tactics in terms of marketing communication to drive the customer forward, and understanding the situations, which are things usually forced upon them, gives you the why they've come to you or why they're seeking something, and that's what those two things separate enable you to make stronger stories in terms of actually drawing people to the business and pulling them in. Once they're in the business and converted, they might have a lot of just detractor forces. So detractor forces is anything that makes them not want to move forward in their journey. This could be maybe cost. It can be their self-motivation. They feel it's too overwhelming, it's too big a challenge. There's a lot of detractor forces, but it's important to understand those as well. And usually they get drawn more out in user interviews, particularly, and they're not necessarily the same as pain points. The pain points are the bigger problems you're facing. These forces are things that kind of nudge them away from your product or business, and that's super important to understand as well. Once they get to the purchase conversion point, then we talk about sort of actions, and the actions are anything they're doing that's a direct touch point with your business, using a product, using a service, contacting customer support. Sorry. Anything that's directly in your ecosystem, and they're things that you own, you control, so it's a bit easier to manage, and you can draw them through the journey there into loyalty. Again, there still be detractor forces acting upon them on that point, but they're usually the detractor forces there are usually the business itself. So poor customer care or a product doesn't quite work, those sort of things that you can act on and solve. So they're a bit easier to manage once you get to that point. So here's a bit more of a concrete example. So this is Luca again. We've got still the attributes at the top. This will build on, you can build this into the persona map itself as well, below the other sections we had earlier. Example of an event for Luca is the local news on climate related regulations that are upcoming from the EU and Italian climate regulations, like CBAM, and local business news, heightening his awareness of compliance deadlines and the financial implications of inaction. So it's something that it's getting drip fed to him. It's going in there, but it's not making him action anything particularly at that time. But it's in his state of awareness. And then a situation example is a customer request for a low carbon product. So one of Luca's larger clients requests proof of his company's emissions reductions to maintain the partnership. So that's going to force Luca to do something and force him to maybe seek a solution, seek help in that moment. So that's a very big driver for him to move forward. The detractor forces here for him, one of the examples is cost and time. His limited budget restricts investments in advanced sustainability initiatives or technology. So he's struggling to really prioritize this at this point. We need to help him overcome that, understand what is the product services we offer that can help get that detractor forces away from him. And then in the actions, for example, he's exploring a partnership with a carbon consultancy. That's why there's a weird artifact there. To prepare for CBAM, Luca reached out to a recommended carbon management consultant to better understand the data requirements and available resources for compliance. So that's an action, a touch point that he's probably going to hit with your business, and you can act on that one. Any detractor forces here are more intrinsic to the business. So example here would be lack of support. So limited or slow customer support causes Luca to lose trust in the business and look elsewhere for a similar solution. Again, more in terms of the business control to mitigate against those detractor forces. I can show you very briefly. Copy a link again in the chat. So I've just copy a link to if you jump on with an example there. As Marie said, we will send you this afterwards so you can have an example and understand how to sort of structure that. It's quite they can get quite big, these persona maps, or as small as you need for your business, but we'll give you a template that you can use. Okay. So there we go. Yeah, thanks, Mary. So yeah, we'll provide this for you. There's an example one filled in, and there's one below which will be a blank template as well, which you can use to fill in from the user research. Okay.
But not for today. Not yet.
Today, no.
I don't think we have enough time for that.
Well, you probably need about another 4 hours just to do one block.
So not today. So just to see how all this theoretical information, lends in reality, this is an example of personas we created a few years ago for a client involved in the promotion of passive houses, so sort of net zero homes, basically. And it shows how you have to deal with those personas, so hopefully enhanced personas, but also multiple personas and multiple stories that are all intertwined into the decision-making process. Here you have the business has different businesses. So they have the self-built homes of homeowners. So it's B2C essentially. And they also have social landlords or universities interested in building passive house buildings. And so in each market, you have a sort of winning trio of you need a client paying for the building, you need a designer designing the building, and you need a builder to build it properly. And all of these need to be convinced and brought into the decision-making process. And so for this passive house organization, they all had to bring those different players, different personas to a minimal level of understanding of what it takes to build a passive house, to be able to sell a passive house, basically. So it's really important that you take the time, you find the resources to document those personas thoroughly and deeply, to understand those interactions, and the journeys that they all go through to become customers or buyers or users of your solution. So this is just one example. And then back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, so we've talked about your customers, your users, which is obviously a very human, user-centered approach. Now, to complete the kind of donut, we need to think about the social and economic impact and need here. And for this, we can still use personas, but we use two specific sets of types of templates. And these are non-human personas. So this is anything that is the natural world, plants, fauna and animals and insects that could be impacted by the product and service, and then non-user personas. So these are humans, these are people that could be directly impacted. So the example here is of non-human personas would be trees if there's a forest that's impacted from deforestation, birds, whales if there's animals impacted by deforestation, or perhaps the sea being impacted. So I think here you can get quite specific here, and obviously we're never going to do a persona for every non-human that is affected. But here you can bring it broader, that there's, the first one is just nature. You look at, okay, what's the natural impact of here on product and service, and that will be the first step, I think, to kind of understand a little bit, okay, what are the challenges that our business and service creates for the natural world. Look at the needs of the natural world and the challenges, and then the protection side is how can we prevent or reduce the impacts, and maybe give back and contribute and heal a bit of the impact from our business and services. And this also includes our supply chains, so any suppliers that also may be impacting. So it may not be your business directly, but there could be suppliers that you work with. Of course, the world is the world, and we have to still use probably things that are going to be damaging, but it's making sure that we're responsible for the whole of our products and service life cycle, that we maybe push suppliers to do certain actions to give back. And then for the social aspects, an example could be for Poonam. She's a child worker, and if you're maybe one of supplier uses a factory in their supply chain, and you can build a persona that looks at, okay, we know there's potential child workers that are in our life cycle that we should try and alleviate. And it's just getting the business to really think about these things from the ground up, and not think about it post, after you launched and you're running and stuff, that we actually do it from the very get-go. And of course, we're not going to solve every single challenge probably in the world, but it's certainly getting on the radar so we can start thinking about it, start pushing suppliers that are maybe acting irresponsibly to do better. These work alongside our user and customer personas.
Thanks, Joe. No, we'd maybe like to invite you to take a couple of minutes to think about, even if you are in this positive impact space, which could be your non-human influences on your customers. So, Joe, I think you have another board for this.
Yeah, another board to give it a go.
So if you can reflect and use that board to look at some non-human actors in your business ecosystem or supply chain.
There is a link in the chat. I'll just put there back to the FigJam board. So if everyone wants to drop in, I'll explain a bit the board and how you can use it. For the canvas here, it's split in kind of two sections that also have two halves. So we have human personas to the left-hand side, and there's the indirect and direct. The direct's a more simple option because that's your customers and your users and your stakeholders. That's all the direct human personas here. To the left of that, there's indirect, and that's anyone you think potentially people that are in the supply chain that could also be indirectly affected or part of the business ecosystem. And to the right of those, this other half is non-human personas. So again, direct, if you know that your business does have direct impact on the natural world, then you can drop it in the direct. I imagine a lot of companies will more have indirect impact, so suppliers potentially that you're working with that have a impact on the natural world. And what we can do is just use the post-it notes and just drop down a few of the names, just the title of the personas. So if it's trees or if it's child worker, just put those down. We don't need the detail here. Just have a little think about who you think your human personas and non-human personas are.
And I guess because you are working towards positive environmental impact, there's a chance that you'll have several ecosystems you're positively impacting as part of your non-human personas, like the atmosphere, if you're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, or the soil. I think Darren was talking about soil, so I'm just giving you a little hint there. So any other ecosystems or species or that you're positively impacting, you can also put them in here. It's not only about negative impact.
Yep.
So give it a go.
Darren, do you want to go?
And then Jamie.
Yeah.
So Darren, which non-human personas did you find?
So culturally here in Hawaii, we do refer to nature as brother and sister. So Brother Ohia is one tree here specifically in Hawaii that has a disease. It's a foreign disease, but healing the soil can help heal the land. So these medicine plants are all interconnected, and also to our trees that give us fresh water to drink, since we're on an island that depends on rain for fresh water. So there there's so many connections, and I have to be clear enough that it's a direct link to my actual direct human persona customers also.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
It's really good. I think definitely see how it helps formulate a bit of the marketing communication strategy as well. You could, speaking about these stories using the non-human personas can build a really, really strong story for the business.
Thank you, Darren. Jamie, do you want to talk us through your thoughts? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Jamie Ong, and I just founded a nature-based solutions consultancy called Just EcoCities, and my 3 pillars are cleaner water, greener cities, and fairer access. And I'm based in New York City, and so I guess in terms of direct human personas, my target group right now is nonprofits working in local communities to advance environmental improvements and climate change improvements in their own neighborhoods. So the direct personas would be executive directors and their staff of local nonprofits and community organizations, as well as the specific groups that they serve. Direct non-human personas, I'm looking at specific nature-based solutions like modular salt marsh, for example, or green stormwater infrastructure like rain gardens. And so those those direct non-human personas would be, coastal and freshwater habitats, as well as the wildlife that depend on them. If we're looking at an urban neighborhood, street trees or parks could be another one. And then indirectly, there's water quality improvement. That's a benefit. And then for the indirect human personas, just kind of building out from there, any residents that are around the practice that I'm installing, commuters that might come through, or even tourists.
Right.
It's a great set. I think I really like the street trees as a non-human persona. I think it's a really good one.
And same for freshwater resources. Yeah, it's a very thorough set of personas. Thanks, Jamie.
Does anyone else have any questions or about creating non-human personas or non-direct human personas? Oh, okay.
Right.
Cool.
Let's crack on. We have 15 minutes left, or just less maybe, to wrap up.
Okay, good. So the next step of this is to bring us all together. So once you've got your good understanding of your own customer base, maybe multiple character personas that you're using to collate all your user research, the next step is to kind of map the service blueprints. If no one's dealt with service blueprints before, it's a framework to kind of visualize the relationships between different service components. So that's the product and service that the business produce and own. And then there's the sort of supplier chain, the back end systems. Maybe if it's technology, then it's the data centers, things that are running in the background that the end customer doesn't see but are still part of the business. And then any actions that the customer does throughout their journey, and then also a layer on terms of any of the social and ecological impact as well. And these are really good for giving a business a full comprehensive understanding of the service they're producing and providing, and underlying resources needed. Doing this at an early stage also brings out some of the risks and problems that could arise at different phases. So it's like a very turbocharged user journey mapping, if you've done user journey mapping before. And user journey mapping tends to focus on sort of the light green strip there, the product service experience over time. Doesn't tend to go deeper than that in terms of then the things that are happening behind the scenes for the business, why this is all happening in terms of the business strategy, the context, and then in any of the social environmental impact, risks, and opportunities. It's a really good exercise to do early on after research is done. You can also do it later as well. It's not thing, but it's a good thing also to share within to internal stakeholders or maybe investors who are trying to get on board, to really give a visual kind of overview of what it is your business is providing. In terms of just breaking that down a little bit into different sections. The first top section is focused on the traditional kind of phases of the journey, and this is all still user-centric in terms of the context here. So we start with awareness, discovery, conversion, loyalty to advocacy. Can adapt those dependent on your business, and you can sometimes put a timeline on there if your business product service is timeline dependent. If it's not, you don't have to. And then the swim lanes, or the next sections, are all around the strategic context. So it helps you really narrow down, okay, what is the problem we're solving at each phase, and why we're doing this. So here we've got the business objective on top, and that can be a business objective for each section, each phase, or it could be, and also a general business objective on top, if you've got a North Star. And then the problem, so this is the user problem that they're having, what they're trying to solve. And that can be per phase as well, or maybe just a holistic problem that goes across the full spectrum, depends on the business. What's the goal of the user? And that's usually each stage, because you need to break that down and understand what will push the user into the next kind of phase of their journey. Then we tend to put the marketing funnel on here as well. That helps bridge the gap a little bit between the marketing stories and maybe the product or the service story. And marketing funnels obviously can define things slightly differently in terms of the qualified leads and sales qualified leads that are in the business. So we just show where that fits on the bigger picture. It helps align the different teams. If you can move forward, Marie. And the next sections are then the product and service experience level. So we have the user events and situations and actions we discussed earlier, and this is where you would map them. So how does each action and event cascade into the next phase? And that's usually like a flow diagram in this bit. If it's a digital product, you can break that down into specific actions they're taking, like they visit this website or they visit this social media post, and they move forward that way. And then we look at the touch points for each phase of the journey, both physical and digital. And then any backstage actions, and that can be you having to, as a business, contact suppliers, or it could be technological backstage actions. So if a lead comes in, what happens to the service, what service you need to provide to be able to take that lead and contact them. If it's a digital product, there could be quite technical things going on the backstage. If it's managing databases, things like that. So that can be quite good to leave out all the technical kind of solutions that you need to have at each phase. And finally is the non-human and non-user personas that we have just discussed. They get put into this section, and that helps build out the social and environmental impact, both positive and negative, that we're having at each phase, and really gets us to think about what it is we're doing to help and contribute, as well as any risks we see of potential negative impacts we're having along the supply chain there and the life cycle of the product. And also mention we used to put in any policy and regulation and what part of the journey that could affect in terms of our users. Very useful for understanding marketing stories that we could base around that as well. So that kind of sums up the different structures. That's kind of I would say the swim lanes you kind of need in a service blueprint. You can increase these. There can be measurements in terms of like tracking and data tracking and performance measurement. You can go quite deep with these service blueprints. But as a visualization of the full product and service, it's a super useful artifact to have at hand and to think through. I think if you can fill this in fully, you're going to have a really good grasp exactly of what the product and service you're producing, why you're doing it, and what problem it's solving. We do have
You can show, briefly the overview what it looks like in real life.
So this example is it was a healthcare startup tackling sort of mental health crisis, and we broke it down in terms of same phases at the top, and this product was a time-based kind of product really. You see an example of how the phases have changed at the top here. We've got support instead of advocacy. But you can see here's blocks per phases. Sometimes they overlap, but there's all the goals, all the context, all the problems are alleviated for each one. And then they've got the marketing phases, which is slightly different or very different from the main phases of the thing. Then the actions the user's taken throughout the process and how they flow through each phase. And this is not every single action, but the key ones that you found through the research that really push the user through. Some quotes from research is always quite nice to show where this is coming from, information. And in this instance, there's multiple character personas on this map. They're not interlinked, but sometimes it's good to map them out. If they are interlinked, they are affecting each other for each phase, that you can show that visually. It's really strong. And then their platforms, emotions, the intended outcomes. Then you see the social and economic, social and environmental impact that the business is having. Example of measurement plan placed on the service blueprints, risk management, so all the risks that are coming out, and opportunity. So it's quite in depth, and it's ultimately customizable to your own business, your own challenges, really. With some key ones that kind of should be on there to help you. We will provide a blank version for this as well, so you can use it yourself.
So know that you understand how to document your customer stories and your ecosystems. It's time to create a research plan. And so what do we have in a research plan? So we have a set of clear objectives for the research that says outstanding questions, assumptions to validate or invalidate. You need to identify who needs to be taking part and feeding you with insight. So who are your ideal research participants, usually based on your ideal customer and partners and persona profiles that you've identified and that you want to validate. Then you need to find out how you are going to recruit those people and enough people to take part into your research, whether it's using your own connections or using external recruitment agencies. And then you have to select those different research methods that we walked you through today to understand what best suits your objective. And obviously put all this together in a plan, like in a Gantt, to understand how long it's going to take you to get to where you want to be. So we are a bit short on time, so I think we're going to skip that activity, but you can have a think after this, which is essentially trying to get you in the mind in your own time to think about what other research methods you could use for your own business. So just to conclude with a bit of an example there, we're presenting here a research plan that we've used for a climate financial technology innovation launch. And so over the course of about roughly 4 months, this is what we did. So we initiated some recruitment after scoping the research. We did some internal stakeholder interviews, so talking to sales people within the client's business. We did some qualitative client interviews, about 20 on each of the different segments. We did a co-design workshops with some clients in a like face-to-face setting. We did an online survey with about 200 people fitting the target audience. We did a fake door test where we put like some a banner on the client's website to see if people would click onto this banner advertising the service, and also which features they would be most interested in. And obviously this ended with us saying, oh, this was just a test to gauge your interest in a feature that's coming. Leave us your details and we'll let you know when it's out. And then we collected all this insight and conducted a sort of value effort assessment workshop with the client team to understand and rank features based on their value for the client, value for the business, and effort to build for the business. And that led to us and the client scoping the proof of concept for design and build, which was a Figma prototype of an online digital service, and then testing it back with real customers. So that was the research phase that led to the launch of the first offer, so the pilot or MVP application that was then designed by us and built by the Climate team after another set of testing. So this is just to give you some context of what it looks like in real life. So in terms of next steps and wrapping this up, so first, thank you for your attention. And we know it was a long session. We will be sharing the material, which means the slides, the Figma boards, and the recording with you via email. And we're also inviting you to book a free research consultation with us to discuss where you are in terms of research and what you could be doing to increase your level of understanding and how you embed that strategic insight into your product roadmap or marketing. So this will be in our follow-up email that you will receive this later this week. Okay, and so I just want to thank you again for your time, and maybe I will leave Joe to conclude with some words of designer wisdom.
Thanks, Mary. Yes, so just I'd like this quote from Robert Lee Peters, who's a designer in the US, and he says that design creates culture, culture shapes values, and values determine the future. I think it's really nice that it kind of speaks to the fact that all the products and services we have can be important. We should seek to have high impact, because ultimately that does create culture that changes behaviors. And if we want to improve the world, then also that's through good design and good services, and ultimately that will change the future we will want.
Well, essentially, designers have the power with entrepreneurs to change the world. That's I think that's the conclusion to this. So thank you guys for your time and attention. These are our contact details. And yeah, check your inbox in the next few days for all the wrap-up information from this session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys.